Thank you, Terry, and welcome everybody. Um, what is mysticism, and what are the qualifications to be called a mystic? There is no single answer to this question and no definition. From what I have read, I would suggest that it has to do with seeing beyond appearances. It has to do with a special kind of knowledge, and this knowledge is not the ordinary type, and it would not fit our normal understanding of that word. Why did Socrates maintain that he knew nothing? And why do those who seem to know something often speak in ways that confound us? This talk will consider these questions. Until I began to look into mysticism, I did not realize what a huge subject it is. And in an hour only, I can only give the briefest account. Throughout history, there have been extraordinary people whose words have come down to us, which make us question our normal world view. They do not subscribe to our view of reality because they have the power to see beyond appearances. These powers are not anything akin to magic, but, for example, the Plato's writings have shaped and influenced the Western world for 2,500 years, and it's likely that they will continue to do so far into the future. The quality that unites many of the mystics is that they deal with matters which go beyond time and dwell in eternity. And so what they say endures for all time. Socrates, Plato's teacher, considered that our lives on earth are solely for the purpose of preparing for death, when the soul and body will part company. His own life was an example of how to be prepared, and on account of this, he was looking forward to his own death, where he would not be held back by his gross body. Thinking this way gave him the freedom to follow what he thought was the right thing to do. Instead of taking the poisonous hemlock, which was his sentence from the Athenian court, he did have the opportunity to avoid death. But to do so would have compromised what he thought was just. He thought that to be just was of benefit to the doer, and that injustice harmed the doer. In saying this, he had no consideration of the body. The harm and benefit were to the soul alone. It was more important for him to do what he felt was just, which benefited his soul, rather than avoid death, which only concerned the body. Recently at the Theosophical Summer School, we were given a demonstration of AI. This was truly remarkable, and its capabilities were astonishing. Anything could be answered, and not only that, the AI could be asked to adopt any style and any type of format. All this was done in a matter of seconds, something that would have taken hundreds of hours' work if you tried to do it yourself. But the question I was left with was, does AI know anything? And the answer, of course, is it does not. But it does have a power to digest mountains of information and use that information to produce whatever you ask of it. So, what does it really mean to know? Questions of this type are asked frequently in the Upanishads and also by the mystics from all branches of philosophy and religion. Meister Eckhart, a 13th century Dominican friar who is often referred to as a mystic, says that this kind of real knowing is more like an unknowing. And the Upanishads say that the only knowledge worth having is knowledge of the self, which, as it is not a thing, cannot be known in the normal sense. And the instruction to us by the oracle at Delphi is to know thyself. Where do we look for answers to these questions about knowledge and the self? Perhaps it should be understood at the outset that these questions are better left unanswered. There is no answer in the normal sense, and this is because this kind of knowing is rather more about being than knowing. There are no absolute answers, but along the way it might feel as if there are. But any answers will be more like stepping stones. The transformation or uncovering of your true being is the real journey towards knowing. And in this type of knowing, once known, all is known. And yet it is as if nothing is known. It is where knowledge, the knower, and the known lose their separation and merge into something which cannot adequately be described in words. And it is why those who have this type of knowledge, or rather have uncovered more of their being, are called mystics. One power that I find when reading the words of the mystics is that they can awaken something inside you, even if you only have a very limited idea of their meaning. These mystics have moved to another dimension where they see things completely differently. For example, Ramana Maharshi, a recent guru who died in 1950 and who embraced completely the idea of non duality, replied to a guest who had stayed at the ashram several months, but who now said that he had to leave and return home. He said, "There is no coming and no going." When I read that nearly 40 years ago, I was stunned, and of course I had no real understanding of what was meant. And I am still not sure. I could give some words of explanation as to the meaning, but I suspect that if I asked AI the same question, the answer would come out better. The plain fact, however, is that I do not truly understand his answer because my state of being and my mind are not sufficiently elevated to understand it. I see separation of all things, and Ramana Maharshi sees nothing but the unity of all things. Nevertheless, I do have this deep response, like a resonance, that this is a statement of the truth, the Sat, towards which we are all being called. In preparation for this talk, I have concentrated almost entirely on two sources: Mysticism by Evelyn Underhill and Mysticism East and West by Rudolf Otto. It is worth noting that Underhill's book was published in 1911 and Otto's 1924. This period is not too long after the formation of the Theosophical Society, and also a similar time to when Swami Vivekananda visited this country and the US. This period seems to have been one where the interest in spiritual matters was very prominent. Underhill's book quotes from many sources, whereas Otto's is focusing on just two: Shankara from the east and Meister Eckhart from the west. What is clear is that there have been many hundreds of mystics, and they do not fit into a one-size-fits-all box. They do, however, have similarities. They do not see the world as we normally do. We say that seeing is believing. But two people can see the same thing and yet see something totally different. Mother Teresa saw Calcutta as beautiful, whereas we might see it as squalid. Ramakrishna saw the Holy Mother in all, without exception. This is because of their state of being, which is of a different order. With the Theosophical Society, the word God is not often used. This is because there are so many beliefs and associations connected to that word which are not helpful. Tonight, however, this word will be used many times, and it represents the highest concept within creation. There is something beyond even God and creation, about which nothing can be said. It is described in the Mandukya Upanishad by using only negatives, saying what it is not. Meister Eckhart uses the word Godhead for that which cannot be spoken about. In the Eastern tradition, the word is Brahman. Rudolf Otto, in his book, makes the point that even Shankara, the great follower of the philosophy called Advaita, which means not two, cannot help but use words which imply a relationship. And there cannot be a relationship between ourselves and that which is beyond words. I hesitate to say more, but if I have understood correctly, Ishvara is put forward as the highest concept about which anything can be said. To have knowledge of that which is beyond words is the subject of the Upanishads. It is the only knowledge worth pursuing. It is the knowledge of the self. However, if Shankara seems to speak in a way that implies a relationship with that which is beyond words, it is inevitable that in venturing to look at this, we will all speak in such a way that might fail on this point. In many teachings, we are recommended to develop certain virtues or qualities. Purification is one such recommendation. But I have noticed that many great teachers warn against the pitfalls that can befall those who believe that this by itself brings you to God. To give you an example, Eckhart says that if you believe you can find God in a particular way, such as becoming pious or purifying your body, you will get the way but miss God. Swami Vivekananda, when he visited the UK and the US, was reprimanded by his fellow Swamis in India for breaking some of the rules which they followed, including eating meat. His reply to those Swamis was along the lines that he was not interested in a supreme who could be tainted by a piece of meat. Eckhart also warns against trying too hard or putting too much force into finding God, which are both signs of the ego, saying instead that it is better to empty yourself and remain passive, be receptive, and allow God to work within you. When you hear his powerful words, you become aware that the meaning of purity has to be better understood. A word that Eckhart uses many times, and will appear a number of times in the readings, is creatures. And this needs a little explanation. It means anything created and in creation. But this does not only refer to the physical. It could include any ideas or attachments. God is pure good in himself. Therefore will he dwell nowhere but in a pure soul. There he will pour himself out. Into that he can wholly flow. What is purity? It is that a man should have turned himself away from all creatures and have set his heart so entirely on the pure good that no creature is to him a comfort, that he has no desire for aught creaturely, save so far as he may apprehend therein the pure good, which is God. And as little as the bright eye can endure aught foreign in it, so little can the pure soul bear anything in it, any stain on it that comes between it and God. To it, all creatures are pure to enjoy, for it enjoyeth all creatures in God, and God in all creatures. Similarly, poverty requires further understanding, and Elizabeth is going to read these quotes. The first one by St. John of the Cross.
That thou mayest know everything, seek to know nothing. That thou mayest possess all things, seek to possess nothing. In detachment, the spirit finds quiet and repose, for coveting nothing, nothing wearies it by elation, and nothing oppresses it by dejection, because it stands at the center of its own humility. For as soon as it covets anything, it is immediately fatigued thereby.
Meister Eckhart has a whole sermon on the beatitude, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." It is not very complimentary about those who have a limited concept of poverty. And at one point, Eckhart says that this kind of limited understanding would not satisfy a fly. To quote a few lines from this sermon, if a man is to be poor of will, he must will and desire as little as he willed and desired when he was not. And this is the way for a man to be poor, by not wanting. Secondly, he is a poor man who knows nothing. For a man possesses this poverty, for a man to possess this poverty, he must live so that he is unaware that he does not live for himself, or for truth, or for God. He must be so lacking in all knowledge that he neither knows, nor recognizes, nor feels that God lives in him. More still, he must be free of all understanding that lives in him. For when that man stood in the eternal being of God, nothing else lived in him. What lived there was himself. Therefore, we declare that a man should be free from his own knowledge as he was when he was not. That man should let God work as he will and himself stand idle. This is no small undertaking and illustrates why only a few succeed. God, according to the persons, is eternal work, but according to the essence and its perpetual stillness, he is eternal rest. Did I read that right? God, God, according to the persons, is eternal work, but according to the essence and its perpetual stillness, he is eternal rest. Tranquility, according to his essence, activity, according to his nature, perfect stillness, and perfect fecundity. This is the same as the difference between Ramana Maharshi and the guest who was leaving. The mystics see from a different point of view. the point of view available to them is because of their elevated being. But to be clear, their being has not actually been elevated. It was always eternally there in perfection. But that is the appearance. We do not have access to this because it is as if it is hidden from our view. The truth is, there is no becoming, even though it seems like there is. In the Timaeus, Plato asks through Socrates an important question.
We must make a distinction of the two great forms of being and ask, what is that which is and has no becoming? And what is that which is always becoming and never is?
It is, I believe, important to appreciate fully the difference about that which is being spoken about. That which is has always been and always will be. It is eternal and unchanging. That which is becoming never was and never will be. It is constantly changing. Focusing on the becoming, we often forget the true being which was ever there. So, what do the mystics say about what is important in connecting with the higher consciousness? As far as I have read, no mystic encourages constant activity of the mind. They say the opposite and often refer to stillness. For example, from Eckhart.
The best and noblest way in which thou mayest come into this life is by keeping silence and letting God work and speak. Where all the powers are withdrawn from their work and images, there is the word spoken. The more thou canst draw in all thy powers and forget the creature, the nearer art thou to this, and the more receptive. God is nearer to me than I am to myself. He is just as near to wood and stone, but they do not know it.
And this one from Burma, Jacob Burma.
When both thy intellect and will are quiet and passive to the expressions of the eternal word in spirit, and when thy soul is winged up above that which is temporal, the outward senses and the imagination being locked up by holy abstraction, then the eternal hearing, seeing, and speaking will be revealed to thee. Blessed art thou, therefore, if thou canst stand still from self-thinking and self-willing, and canst stop the wheel of thy imagination and senses.
Quite often in Otto's book, he doesn't say where the quotation is coming from, but this is from Otto's book, quoting Eckhart. Esse est Deus. Being is God. Therefore, God and being are the same. Such being is opposed to all becoming and therefore to all change. The most beautiful thing which man can say of God is that, knowing his inner riches, he becomes silent Therefore, prate not of God. Another problem which is often spoken about is the reconciling of the apparent worthlessness of anything worldly with the fact that it was created by God and therefore must be good. If the world is meaningless and nothing in creation is valuable or just an illusion, why is it there? Earlier, we heard how Eckhart often uses the word creature to mean everything in creation. In the Indian tradition, represented here by Shankara, we often hear the word Maya when referring to creation, which is often translated as illusion. Reality for these teachers means permanence. So anything that is transient, which includes the whole of creation, is not real. In his book, Otto draws a connection between the two terms, and there follows an extract where he has just been speaking about how nothing evil can come from God. And yet we seem to be told that the creation holds nothing but the source of our own downfall. So this is a quote, which I haven't got as a slide, but this is a quote from Otto's book. This is Otto speaking. This double meaning has developed from a common religious dual evaluation of world and creature. On the one hand, the world and the creation is the work of God, is good, and is a reflection of his glory. On the other, the world and all that is creature is vain, empty, transient, and perishable. It is a fetter and an obstacle, a hindrance and a bedazzlement, a handful of sand, sorrow, and confusion. The world has to be conquered and overcome. It is opposed to God. It essentially antagonistic to him. We find the world thus disavowed not only in the mystics, but in simple prayers, hymns, and sermons of Christian, Jewish, and Mohammedan origin. Without resorting to mysticism, this negation can make use of expressions which come near to the doctrine of Maya, for example, illusion and deception of the senses, vanity and hollowness, vapor and dream. Non mystics also have said of this creature,
formed from the dust, returning to the dust, like a broken shard and withered grass, like a faded flower and a passing shadow, a vanishing cloud, a dying breath, flying dust and a fleeting dream.
this one where he's quoting Eckhart.
All that is created has no truth in itself. All creatures, insofar as they are creatures, as they are in themselves, are not even an illusion. They are pure nothing. All creatures are one mere nothing. There is no creature which is anything. None of these creatures has being. What has no being is nothing.
Otto continues by a logical argument along the following lines. I have abbreviated it to seeing Maya, illusion, creation is said to exist only on account of avidya, which meaning ignorance. However, avidya is created, and so itself is perhaps part of the illusion, and therefore does not really exist. The answer to the question of whether creation expresses the glory of God or is worthless and hindrance is therefore both yes and no. But to help understand this, there's a quotation from Plotinus. By this non-being, of course, we are not to understand something that does not exist, but only something of an utterly different order from authentic being. There is no question here of movement or position with regard to being. The non-being we are thinking of is, rather, an image of being, or perhaps something still further removed than even an image. Now this, the required faint image of being, might be the sensible universe with all the impressions it engenders, or it might be something of even later derivation, accidental to the realm of sense. Or again, it might be the source of the sense world or something of the same order entering into it to complete it. Another quality of the mystics is that they see the supreme in the mundane. Putting it another way, anything in creation reflects the Absolute or God, but it requires clarity of vision, a vision uncluttered with attachments to creatures and the world, to perceive it. Why would our vision be cloudy? It is commonly agreed that it is agitation in the mind. Patanjali's second sutra states that yoga or union is establishing the mind in stillness. Eckhart says that the most powerful prayer is the outcome of stillness. The spiritual text Yoga Vasishta tells a story of the minister who is all powerful and whom no one can defeat. The listener wonders, who can this minister be? It turns out that it is none other than the mind. I suspect that everyone attending this talk is a mystic, and at particular points in our lives, we have had unusual experiences. They may be of different intensities, and this may happen only a handful of times in our lives, but they should not be dismissed on account of their rarity. Sometimes on Sunday I go to the park and I see amateur football teams playing matches. They always seem to me extremely fit, and although sometimes their passes are well off the mark, on the whole they do well. None of these players would make even the team for the local town, let alone the lowest professional side. Playing for Arsenal or for the country and being remembered in 50 years' time is beyond their dreams. And yet they participate and are rewarded for it. It is the same for us who seek to know and understand the truth. We must participate, and certainly Eckhart encourages us to remain receptive, which in itself is a form of participation. How do we remain receptive? By emptying the mind and experiencing, or rather connecting, with the silence and stillness. Great mystics are rare, but they do appear in most centuries, and they are like beacons shining down through the ages to enlighten us. Their experiences, of course, are of a greater magnification, and whilst some may only have a few very heightened experiences, others seem to be more permanently in touch with greater insight. Um, and this is the next is actually the words of Evelyn Underhill herself.
Such a sense of the divine presence may go side by side with the daily life and normal mental activities of its possessor, who is not necessarily an ecstatic or an abstracted visionary, remote from the work of the world. It is true that the transcendental consciousness has now become once for all his centre of interest. Its perceptions and admonitions dominate and light up his life daily. The object of education in the Platonic sense has been achieved. His soul has wheeled around from the perishing world to the contemplation of the real world and the brightest part thereof. That's from Plato's Republic. But where vocation and circumstances require it, the duties of a busy outward life continue to be fulfilled with steadiness and success, and this without detriment to the soul's contemplation of the real.
Just a reminder, when it says real, it means eternal, permanent, unchanging. Rudolf Otto explains one particular similarity between Shankara and Eckhart. It is the concept of me and mine with Eckhart and ahankara with Shankara. Ahankara is difficult to describe simply, but it is all the manifold things which we attach to ourselves, including our thoughts and beliefs, possessions, what I know, what I don't know, family, relatives, everything by which one maintains a personal identity and separateness. There is nothing wrong with these things, but they are not true, on account of them all being transient. The concept of true poverty, as we heard earlier, means that all of this needs to be seen as an obstacle to the mystical experience. For a higher consciousness to be revealed, the mystics say we should become detached from the world, from all things transient, whilst nevertheless playing one's part or doing one's duty fully. In this way, we make our true being, which never changes, more apparent. This is what we recognize in the words of the mystics. These words carry an authority because they point us towards the truth. This is a quotation from Julian of Norwich. It's done it again. It's not moving. Ah, there it is.
For as the body is clad in the cloth, and the flesh in the skin, and the bones in the flesh, and the heart in the whole, so are we, soul and body, clad in the goodness of God, and enclosed. Yea, and more homely, for all these may waste and wear away, but the goodness of God is ever whole.
This is from the Sufi poet Attar.
God is not external to anyone, but is present with all things, though they are ignorant that he is so. The first valley, says the lapwing, is the valley of the quest. It is long and toilsome, and there the traveller must strip himself of all earthly things, becoming poor, bare, and desolate, and so stay till this supernal light casts a ray on his desolation.
How would you know that you have moved to a different realm? Listen to Hugh of St. Victor, an 11th century monk, describing his experience. Is there any doubt that he knows something that we do not? The soul says, "Tell me, what can be this thing of delight that merely by its memory touches and moves me with such sweetness and violence that I am drawn out of myself and carried away, I know not how. I am suddenly renewed, I am changed, I am plunged into an ineffable peace. My mind is full of gladness. All of my past wretchedness and pain is forgot. My soul exults. My intellect is illuminated. My heart is afire. My desires have become kindly and gentle. I know not where I am because my love has embraced me. Also, because my love has embraced me, I seem to have become possessed of something, and I know not what it is. But I try to keep it, that I may never lose it. My soul strives in gladness, that she may not be separated from that which she desires to hold fast forever, as if she had found in the goal of all her desires. Sorry, as if she had found in it the goal of all her desires. She exults in a sovereign and ineffable manner, seeking naught, desiring naught, but to rest in this. Is this, then, my beloved? Tell me that I may know him, and that if he come again I may entreat him to leave me not, but to stay with me forever. We return to the difference often referred to in the Upanishads concerning knowledge of the self and knowledge of the world. Often this knowledge of the self is spoken of as the disappearance of distinction, which is why it is accompanied by the appreciation of the unity of all things. If the self is known, then there is nothing else to be known, because there is no separation or distinction. Another quote from Eckhart.
In the eternal goodness of the divine nature, as in a miraculous mirror, the essence of all creatures is seen as one.
And another.
The soul has something within it, a spark of supersensual knowledge that is never quenched. But there is also another knowledge in our souls, which is directed toward outward objects, namely knowledge of the senses and the understanding. This hides that other knowledge from us. The intuitive higher knowledge is timeless and spaceless, without any here or now.
The Isha Upanishad. But he who beholds all beings in himself and himself in all beings. More from Eckhart. Does the soul know God, oneness, in the creatures? That is merely evening light, first stage. Does she know the creatures are in God, second stage? That is morning light. But does she know God as he who alone is being? That is the light of midday. From Plotinus. There they see all, not in process of becoming, but in being. Each being contains within itself the whole intelligible world, and also beholds it complete in each particular being. Therefore, all is everywhere. Each is there all, and all is each. Meister Eckhart quoting Saint Benedict.
God carries all things hidden in himself, not this and that, distinct and separate, but as one in unity. And when man finds the one in whom all is one, he cleaves to unity.
Here are some quotations from a favourite book of mine called the Ashtavakra Gita. The word Gita means song. Many of the verses are enigmatic, and as suggested by the translator, I've lost my place, um, who is Hari Prasad Shastri, each of these verses could be used as the focus for a meditation. It is uncompromising and speaks only of what is true. Being ever perfect, neither Maya nor the world, neither attachment nor detachment, neither Jiva nor Brahman exist in me. Before the state of self-realization, the world exists only as Maya. The sage, living devoid of the feeling of I and mine, is without attachment. Thou art one pure consciousness. The world is inert and unreal. Even ignorance is non-existent. Therefore, what desire canst thou cherish? Most of the quotations used tonight describe a realm of being that we do not normally occupy in our daily lives. It would be easier to assume that these luminaries were born with this special insight, and perhaps some of them were. But I would like to make the point that constant study coupled with contemplation would have played a substantial part in their awakening. For example, Meister Eckhart spent 2 periods at the university in Paris, the outcome of which resulted in his title Meister. His studies were not only from the Christian tradition, but also included the works of Moses Maimonides, Aristotle, and Plato. One of the works he studied was the Elements of Theology, a series of 211 propositions by the Neoplatonist Proclus. And I'm giving you these just 2 quotes by of these propositions because I've been looking at it for a couple of years, and it's just so difficult to understand. And so, it's, each of these statements takes a lifetime to understand. So I've given you the first proposition and the last proposition. All multitude participates in a certain respect of the one. The last proposition, every partial soul descending into generation descends wholly, nor does one part of it remain on high and another part descend. With each of these propositions, there is a proof as to why it can be no other way. Devoting one's life to this study might open the door to the world occupied by the mystics. It is a way of awakening that which is already known in eternity. The knowledge that we are seeking is there only in eternity. And the final slide is by Proclus. There is another knowledge, however, which is denominated intellectual, of which one kind apprehends all things at once and simply. But the outer is a knowledge not of all things at once, but of one thing at a time. It might bring with it an understanding of what it means to know oneself, which refers to the knowledge which once known is more like an unknowing, and yet knows all that there is to be known, where knowledge, knowing, and the known exist without distinction and are none other than your true being.